it's really easy to be like, I'm good at this and I'm going to do this. Like for some reason, they're like, you're holding boss every single time. And I'm like, oh, I want to be holding boss again. It's stressful, and I kind of want to be pushed into some stuff that like maybe I'm less good at. And one thing that I've seen over the years is it's always been pumps. Pumps are the scary thing for people, like, because they don't usually use them that often. A lot of times when they do have to, it's like, get on the pump, go, sort of thing.
Right.
And so I've seen, myself included, people shy away from the thing that is harder or they have less understanding of or less experience with.
Mm-hmm.
And one big thing that I always try to do for myself and teaching is I'm a big believer in living life on the edge of your comfort zone.
This is the Wildfire Lessons Podcast, where we promote learning by revealing the complexity and risk in the wildland fire service. We share the lessons. The learning that follows is up to you.
Hello, it's your old pal Erik again with a new episode of the Wildfire Lessons Podcast. Today I talk with Lindsay Amundson, a resource manager and prescribed fire practitioner here in the Valley and foothills of Northern California. We talk about training, mentoring, task books, all from her perspective outside the federal, state, or local fire agencies. Lindsay came into fire in a unique way, and in the years since has amassed all kinds of lessons about training and being trained. I hope you enjoy our conversation. And as a note, we reference the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve, which is known by its acronym and goes by BCER. So now you're a Chico local. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Wildfire Lessons Podcast. My name is Erik Apland, and I'm here with Lindsay Amundson. Lindsay, can you introduce yourself and tell us why you're with us today?
Hi, my name is Lindsay Amundson. I am a prescribed fire practitioner here out of Chico, California, working a couple different roles and different positions throughout the state in prescribed fire. And I'm here because Erik kindly asked me to be on his podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. So this podcast episode is kind of in the extended universe of the most recent issue of Two More Chains, which came out at the beginning of December, which is mostly about training and specifically about position task books and the next gen task books and that kind of stuff. And we also had a short, I think it's like 29-minute podcast between me and Travis Dotson, where we talked about next gen task books and some things that you need to do with those that make them different than the original ones. And so I wanted to talk with Lindsay because she works outside of the federal fire juggernaut, but has been involved with a lot of training, a lot of mentorship, and using the task book system, the NWCG system as well. So that's kind of the impetus for talking to you today. So can you tell me about like your history as well? Why don't you tell me about your history, like getting into your corner of fire, actually?
Well, I guess, I'm a biologist, so I started looking at fire and ecosystems. I'm an ecosystem biologist, and just noticing what a role that it played even when I was in school. And I was highly affected by the campfire, actually. A lot of my family members lost their homes, and I did animal rescue up in Paradise, like 2 days after the campfire went through Paradise.
Oh, wow.
And it became this like very traumatic experience, seeing the devastation. And honestly, like it made fire super scary to me. It caused a lot of anxiety. And there's a couple people in the fire world around here, and there was an ecological beneficial fire talk, and people like Wolfie Rugel and Zeke Lunder were speaking at it. And they were like, come up and burn with us, they said it to everybody in the crowd. And I don't know, something just clicked. And I went out on my own outside of any training. I took a week off of work and went and got my basic 32 with Dan Kelleher from Firestorm, and just kind of started down that road, having no idea where I was going, having no friends in fire, and I just like somehow got pulled towards it, even though I wanted to run away from it. And So then I just started this crazy train and getting more and more involved and meeting more people and becoming part of the prescribed fire community in our area. And then I went and started working for the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve. And a big part of the way they run things is it's kind of like a workforce development program where we would take kids, I say kids, college students usually, that had no prior experience in working in the outdoors or in fire or in ecology, and start building them up from the ground up and getting them their basic 32s and sending them to trainings and getting them on burns, and um, eventually becoming the crew supervisor and then the project manager for the ecological reserve. And so just that constant revolving door of people come in knowing nothing, we get them trained up, and then as soon as they're really, really good, they realize that we don't pay enough and they go off and get a good job, which is the goal,
Right,
but
right.
yeah, it was a lot of training and learning.
Wow, that's amazing. I had no idea about that history with campfire and all of that. Wow, and yeah, I mean, I think the part about bringing in young people, a lot of whom don't have any prior experience, maybe have lived in more urban or sort of suburban settings and stuff like that, don't have the outdoor experience. I think that's something that we hear a lot about in the agencies as well, and it's typically we hear about it as like a complaint, like
Mm-hmm.
oh, we're our workforce. I don't know I don't even know what it's supposed to be, like the thing that comes out of that's bad, but that's a very common thing. Like, oh, we're not getting kids from the woods anymore, and so that's why you fill in the blank. But it's cool that you have exactly that same pool of people that you draw from, and then you bring them up, and then they become like really cool, like outdoor. Whether they're running chainsaws or drip torches or whatever, it's
Mm-hmm.
like that's very similar, and I like that it's just part of the program versus something that well, this is terrible or whatever. Just what I hear a lot.
Well, I think, honestly, I used to be an outdoor guide too. And, I would rather take somebody that knows nothing and hasn't developed bad
Mm-hmm.
habits
Mm-hmm.
and build them up than take somebody that comes in and is like, I already know everything. Cause I
Mm-hmm.
remember every trip I would lead and somebody would be like, I'm an Eagle Scout. I was like, shoot. Because then, then they know how to do it and they're not going to do it, and I'm like, well, why
Mm-hmm.
don't you just go on your own trip then? So
Right.
no offense to the Eagle Scouts. They're amazing. But I love the idea of super green people coming in, and
Yeah.
I could think of like stewardship. I could go out and work on 1 acre and steward an acre and be like, I did that. But if I
Mm-hmm.
teach 10 people how to steward an acre, then I potentially help steward those 10 acres, and then they steward 10 people and help them, and then it just this exponential growth of land stewardship. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why training is my favorite thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So following up on that, I guess, why don't we talk about like what is it like to work for an organization that isn't part of like the federal government or really a state fire agency or anything like that, but use this system, the NWCG training, these, official positions with task books and all this stuff that I think was really designed initially for fire response, or which I should say suppression, and sometimes isn't maybe the greatest fit, or hasn't been historically the greatest fit in prescribed fire. What's your experience working within that system, and I don't know, what's your take on it?
I mean, I I think it's all the things, in the sense of I've had really great experiences within the NWCG system. With taking the different classes. Like I really love the L280, the S290. I've taken a lot of NWCG classes over the years, and I've had really great experiences with them in general. I think there's some things that are a little bit dangerous. Like I'll go with the S212, right? Being a person that's seen a lot of very green people go through that and then come out and be like, I'm Paul Bunyan. And I'm like, no. So I think the NWCG courses are amazing for the overview of the subject matter. I think
Hmm.
that they do a really good job with that. Um, I think that it should really be stressed that you're like, okay, you've read the book, but you
Mhm.
haven't done the thing. And especially when it comes to fire and running saw and dropping trees and stuff like that, it's trigger time, it's experience. And, um, I think that just getting through a course is awesome, but I think it stressing how important that experience is, that like you've just had your like basic, groundwork laid, and now you have to build the house, right?
Mhm.
um, and I always remember this one guy, Jim Wells. He's a pretty cool burn boss, and he always would say, slides in the carousel, slides in the carousel, you just keep
Right.
putting those slides in the carousel. And then I was picking on him, and I was like, you mean more photos in your iPhone? He's like, shut up. But it really is. It's like, you're young and you're cocky and you're like, I just learned how to drop trees, and now you think you know it all. And I
Mhm.
think that that can be a little bit dangerous. But overall, I think NWCG is doing a good job of delivering the information to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, I think that's a huge commonality with what I've seen when I was working on ranger districts or national parks or wherever. It was very common to take some course and then like the next step does have to be mentorship and training and experience and building uh, kind of the muscle memory. I mean, depending on what it is, and that could be in leadership too, right? Like taking a course. In fact, I think that might be the hardest thing of all. I guess, in my opinion, is like taking a course in like leadership, like L280, L380, one of those, and then like, okay, but the next step is you actually have to lead people and make those decisions, and that is it. That's a big leap that requires a lot of help. I think figuring out how exactly to do that and what your style is and all that stuff. Anyway, so I can definitely see that. I think that's just universal with all of us. So adding on to that, then like so once someone has taken a course and they want to go for a particular qualification, say it's like firefighter type 1 or something like that. Um, we have these position task books for all of those. Um, what's your take on those? I mean, what's been your experience with working with folks that had position task books, but then also, as a trainee yourself at various times?
Yeah, you have put ink in my task book, and I appreciate that, for my FEMA task book. I think task books, they're a great way to show people like, this is the knowledge that the overall higher powers believe that you should have in order to be in this position. I think that's totally fair. It's not just like somebody's opinion, like, yep, you're good, you're promoted.
Mm.
I really like that about it. I also love the mentor mentee model in
Mhm.
general in learning. I think that it is one of the best ways to learn, or like the journeyman model, apprentice journeyman type thing. I love the way that they model it with a direct, I'm working with Erik, we're learning FEMO, and he's going to sign up on my task book.
Mhm.
Um, like you said, I've never worked for a federal agency in fire. I worked at the Ecological Reserve for years, and now I work for the city of Chico as the Assistant Parks and Natural Resources Manager. So, really outside of those normal agencies. A frustration that I have had, and I have asked so many people to clarify. And honestly, the more I've asked, the muddier the answers have become on who can sign off for your task book and who is
Mm.
qualified. I mean, let's, for example, like I let you sign my task book. I've been a FEMA trainee probably 10 times, and you're the
Mm.
only one that I've ever had sign my task book,
Mm.
because I knew that you worked for a federal agency. And if I
Mm.
ever wanted to move to the feds, they could be like, oh yeah, we know Erik, he is qualified to sign you off. I knew that that would be cool. But then, working outside of agencies, so, everybody that you work with in the feds are getting their task book signed off by other federal employees. And
Mm.
so then it's going to work for your system. I haven't got a clear answer on who I can let sign off on my task books, or if I can sign off on task books. If, per se, somebody at BSER or somebody that works under me for the city now wanted to get their firefighter type 1, and let's say I signed off on their task book, and then they go to the feds or to CAL FIRE and they're like, I'm a firefighter type 1. They're like, who the hell is this Lindsay chick? I've never heard of her.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that having good, clear direction for people with task books open of like, if this is your career goal, do this. Or maybe there's some sort of national registry of people that are qualified that you could look on a list and be like, yep, Erik's on there, this person's not, like, so that people have more clear idea of who can sign off if they want to go into like the federal agencies, that they can
Mhm.
go with their qualifications that they work so hard on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does completely make sense. I think particularly when it comes to something like prescribed fire in I mean, take California as an example. That's where we both live. I mean, there's been a push now for years to get more prescribed fire done, right? To treat more acres than we have been historically. I mean, on the federal side, this region of, say, the Forest Service is um, relatively low on the list of accomplishing acres when you compare California to, say, the Southeast or the Southwest. And then that's true. So it's true of the Forest Service. I think it's true of other agencies as well. And so, there's been this big push by the state to try to get more of this done. And a lot of that is, I think, by necessity going to happen on private lands. I mean, the state of California can't dictate what we do on a national forest or in a national park. And so it seems like we have been moving forward in California, and I think in other states as well, with building up a bigger workforce of people that, like, for instance, through the California burn boss qualification, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting more of these people that have more experience, that have the training. But there does seem to be, I totally agree, there does seem to be this kind of missing link there where you can really get someone who has a ton of experience, who really knows what they're doing burning. And then if they wanted to jump, like you said, to the Forest Service or any of the other agencies, say Fish and Wildlife, they do a bunch of burning around, in the valley and stuff. It would be difficult, I think, for them. Like, it would probably, I think the agencies would probably recognize that they were experienced, but as far as counting that as like, yes, this person is going to come into my organization as a firing boss, say, or something like that. I think that would be pretty difficult. And I think there's folks above us or in different realms that are working on that, but I've not seen that yet. Like you said, I haven't gotten an answer yet. It seems like
Okay.
that's a
Every time
needed.
I've asked, yeah,
Yeah,
people will be like, well, for CAL FIRE, this is how it is, or for
right.
the feds, this is how it is. But for those of us, like, if I wanted to go work for a bigger organization and I say, here's all the things that I've done, they're like, we don't care. You're starting at the bottom. Like,
Yeah.
for sure. I believe that. And I don't think that is right. If people are going to go through the effort of doing their task books and doing all this work just to have it not be recognized. So I think
Hmm.
some sort of standardization that maybe that NWCG could provide, of being like, these people are the qualified people that will be recognized. And I know that's a big ask, but I think, you asked what I thought, and that's what I
Yeah,
think.
no, exactly. We don't want to just all have sunshine and rainbows on every conversation. Yeah, I mean, I think of it as kind of like this is a realm I'm not familiar with at all, but like national registry of like EMTs, right? Like it's
Yeah.
something that does exist. Now, if you go to a particular state, maybe you have to go through their process, but but it does exist. It's something that like those are skills that are recognized and you can carry with you. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Hey folks, this is Erik coming to you from the editing phase of the podcast. And I just wanted to clarify that what we're talking about here is really the agency certification piece of the task book. And in talking to folks after this conversation at NWCG and Aaron Banwell over at Watershed Research and Training Center, basically the short answer is that there are 14 member agencies that are part of NWCG. And then there are a lot of entities that tier off of them, such as all of the individual states. And folks that are part of that system can certify task books and issue red cards. But there's a lot of folks, obviously, that are not part of that system. And so there has been work underway for a while now to figure out a way to bring those people in through some kind of process or entity. I hope that's a little bit clearer, and let's get back to it. Have you had experience with seeing task books, how should I put it, sort of done wrong, or like things that you didn't agree with or you didn't like?
Well, I mean, I guess people's task books they work on getting them signed off. I would definitely watch people get ink in their task books from people where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have that person sign me off, like sort of thing where
Yeah.
I'm like, I think people just want the ink in their book. They don't care where it comes from. And I think that's where it gets muddy, and there's no clear, like I could think that this person is not qualified, or like I could watch them and know that they're not qualified in this and this parts of their task book. This other person can work with them for a couple hours on a burn and be like, yep, and
Right.
I think that makes it muddy, and that's where that different organization thing comes in, and I totally understand that if I went to go get a job with the feds with the task books that I have completed and the positions I have, that they could easily look at them and say, this means nothing to us, right? And so I think that some more clarification there is what we need.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. It's funny. I mean, something that we talked about in Two More Chains was about the sort of the two sides of how to potentially, I don't know, bend or misuse the task book system. One of them is, really rushing someone through, say someone that is liked for whatever reason, or it seems to fit the profile of like, oh yeah, that's a crew boss. So we'll get them through really quick, versus which we called pencil whipping, and that's something definitely I've heard throughout my entire career, is people complaining about folks being pencil whipped, and then the other side being the kind of the gatekeeping side, where people, and that's more like you're talking about gatekeeping on a much larger level, where it's like essentially an entire agency, an entire organization just gatekeeps who is even allowed to be considered. Like, oh, sure, it's nice you brought all your documents and there's an experience record here and it's all filled out exactly the way that it's prescribed to be filled out, and we don't care, right? That's like much bigger gatekeeping than the stuff that I've typically seen. Although I have seen that from people who came into the Forest Service from other organizations, even other governmental organizations. And they would just say, we don't really trust this necessarily. But it sounds like, the pencil whipping might not be as big of an issue if it's sort of unclear who can even sign it. Then it's like, I guess you guys don't have that problem. So that's something.
At the end of the day, back at BSER, I would just be like, I'm the gatekeeper.
Yes.
You're qualified or you're not.
Right.
I don't care about your task book.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, so I mean, you talked about, that training was something that you really loved doing, and that's something you got a lot of value out of that. I mean, to just say like, what did you learn about training is such a gigantic question, but I don't know. Do you want to take a bite at that, even though that's huge, or do you want me to? I can break it down into different pieces too.
No, I think that's fair. I did write down, you sent me the questions and I thank you for that. So I had some time to think. So I kind of solidified it down into not this huge topic, but I would just say like over the course, and it wasn't just at BSER, like throughout my life, I've always ended up to be in that leadership position in every job I've had and becoming that trainer. And honestly, always starting at the bottom. And so, so I know what it's like to be at the lowest level and then getting up to that highest level. This position that I'm in now with the city of Chico is the first time in my life that I just was hired into a management position. And it is, it's like, I don't know where the tools are to
Right.
fix things, or I don't know, whereas before it's like, I know every little step all the way through the process.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting, honestly. But anyway, some things that I have learned about both being a trainer and a trainee is that everyone learns and understands things differently. And I mean that in the sense that I remember like asking somebody to do this task where I needed them to like rock armor this thing that we had created in a tributary. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it, but anyway. And I'm like, I drew it on the whiteboard and I said, this is what we should have it look like. And they were like, yeah, we totally get it. And then I went out the next day and I was like, what the hell is this? And it was like completely not at all what I had in my brain that I thought that I explained so clearly. They saw something completely different. And so it just taught me this lesson that we can try to ask of somebody something that makes perfect sense in our brain and it is not clear and they do not understand. So having that, like, repeat it back to me, tell me what I just asked you, do you understand, do you have any questions, and really like making sure that, and not to speak to them in a like degrading way, but just to have be like, are we on the same page? And so like understanding that my brain works differently than somebody else's brain and that we should cater to that individual's style of understanding. I'm also a really big fan of, I think myself definitely included, is it's really easy to be like, I'm good at this and I'm going to do this. Like for some reason, they're like, you're holding boss every single time. And I'm like, oh, I want to be holding boss again. It's stressful, and I kind of want to be pushed into some stuff that like maybe I'm less good at. And one thing that I've seen over the years is it's always been pumps. Pumps are the scary thing for people, like, because they don't usually use them that often. A lot of times when they do have to, it's like, get on the pump, go, sort of thing.
Right.
And so I've seen, myself included, people shy away from the thing that is harder or they have less understanding of or less experience with. And one big thing that I always try to do for myself and teaching is, I'm a big believer in living life on the edge of your comfort zone. And you keep expanding that comfort zone, because if you keep pushing, then that thing becomes comfortable and then you really get it. And then that's it. So like for me, when I was learning, like getting on the engine and running the engine was scary. It made me nervous. I hated it. And then I just made myself like, just going to learn, and got to the point where it's like, I could run that thing, with my eyes closed, basically. So I think pushing yourself and others, because you should never ask a trainee to do something that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself, to live on the edge of their comfort zone and to continue learning. And I don't care if you've been in fire for 200 years, like Dan Kelleher, or 2 years, like you can tell him I said that. But like continue to push and learn and grow, like, and be curious and be humble. And that's what I would always try to teach people. And I think to wrap that up, I think one thing that I've learned a lot from is mistakes. Like I never go to bed at night thinking, oh my God, everything went perfect. I'm thinking, 99 things went perfect. I'm falling asleep thinking about the one thing that went wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And trying to teach, and also to yourself, be kind about mistakes. Like, and there's different kinds of mistakes, right? There's mistakes where it's like, well, you were just actually negligent. That's different. So that I think needs to be addressed in a different way. But if it was just a mistake that was made that made something happen, it's like, don't belittle people and make that mistake a punishment. Instead, turn that around and be like, we are going to learn from this, exactly like we do in an AAR, right? It's all about what could we have done better next time. It's not about like, what could you, Eric, have done better next time. It's like, what could we as a collective have done better to be more successful? And I think really like drilling that into people, that mistakes can be made in a safe way, and not have it be this belittling, like, you suck kind of feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that this is the case, but it does seem to me that the vast majority of my learning has been through mistakes, and both in fire and in land management, and also in life. And those painful things are, I don't know, maybe to some degree it's like touching the stove. But the nice thing about touching a stove is that it's hot, it hurts, and you're not going to do it again. I think something that can happen with making little mistakes in particular is that if you do something wrong and you get away with it, and you don't bring it up, because it's possible that if you have an open, this is a pretty high-end organization, but that would have this. But if you have an open enough and high-performing enough organization, then people will bring up things that they did wrong that ended up working out, because I think in some ways those are the most dangerous things that we can do. There was a Forest Service risk management guy who used to say that nothing fails like success. And it's like, it's very easy to just get into this mindset of like, we're great, we're doing everything, maybe not right, but what we're doing is working. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work one time, and you've built up this sort of structure of failures almost that are just waiting to happen, essentially. So that's something that I don't think when I was in operations, I don't know that I got into a place where that was common, but there are some organizations, I guess, that I've worked for where it was more common. And then there were some that I've worked for that were like, you hid any kind of mistake, or the other part, like kind of going back to what you were saying about when you take a class and just kind of come out of it thinking like, oh, I'm a genius now, or I'm an expert. Hiding anything you don't know because you don't want to appear, I don't know, new. It's like, if you are new, you're new. That's just how it is. And there's lots of cases of people who maybe have been around for a long time, and then it's almost like this embarrassment that like, how do I not know this yet? You know what I mean? Like, this is something that other people seem to know, and I've been doing this for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, and I don't know what it is. And then, you try to piece it together through context, or you watch somebody, you know what I mean? And then you're like, I don't really know. I think there's a lot of examples of that as well. But anyway, yeah, but I think a lot of that speaks to just the importance of mentorship, and they both having that kind of open culture and not criticizing and punishing people, like you said, and then also that mentorship, where you do have someone that at least one person, where you feel comfortable saying like, I don't know what this word means. I don't know. They asked me to prime the pump, and I don't know how. I know that I have to, but I don't know how.
All of the jargon in fire, like NWCG, FIBO, like all the things. Like for years, I was just like, I totally know what you're talking about. And people just like throw it out there, and creating that culture where I love to do that. Like you and I helped teach the L280 together, and I'm the person that I will know the answer, and I'll be like, can you tell me what a chain is? And I ask the question, whatever the question is, but it could be obvious to me, but it is not obvious to everybody. So I try to, like, when people use jargon or like say things that I remember being like, pretending like I knew instead of asking the question in front of a million people. Like, I love to be the person like, can you please explain what a drip line is? Even though I know, I just want everybody else to know. And I think people are afraid to ask, but building that culture where you're not afraid to ask and you're not
Mm-hmm.
afraid to say, go to your supervisor and be like, I had a chap strike,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a big deal. Like a chap strike is a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. But if you create a culture where it's safe to say, this happened, let's learn from it, and you're not going to be punished. Again, not negligence is a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that would be a different topic, but creating that culture where it's safe to go say, I had a chap strike, or I don't know what this is. Can you explain it to me? I would much
Mm-hmm.
rather have a culture like that than a culture where everybody is just like shows up like I know everything and I am the best.
Mm-hmm.
um, I've been thinking a lot about the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's the thing where there's a cognitive bias that describes systematic tendency of people with low ability in an area
Mm-hmm.
to be overly positive assessments of their own ability.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Especially it was always the Sawyer thing where it's like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
you've been on a saw for 2 weeks. This one kid, he would put up his hands. He'd be like, I'm a Z faller.
Oh
Like, and
no.
I'm like, you learned how to run a saw a month ago. Like, oh my God. And
Wow.
that was his joke. And he freaking meant it. So it's like, I don't know. So
Wow.
yeah, that safe learning environment where I would always tell people, and this is like my overarching thing is like there's confidence and then there's ego, and they're
Mm-hmm.
completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence gives you the ability to speak up and ask the question when you don't know, even though
Yep.
you maybe should, but you have the confidence to ask that. Ego is going to say, don't ask that question. You have to pretend like you know it.
Yep.
And confidence gives you the ability to be humble.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas ego is that thing where it's like you learn something, you're like, now I'm an expert and I'm the best. So there's always going to be somebody better at me. So I always try to like drill down on this, like grow confidence and squish ego thing.
Yeah, that's like perfect. And when you were describing, raising your hand in class to ask a question that you know the answer to, but you know that other people don't and they won't ask, that's exactly what came to mind. It's like that's having the confidence in yourself to say, I don't care if someone thinks they probably won't because they know who you are and they know your experience, but it's possible that someone would be there who wouldn't know that and who would think,
Mm-hmm.
well, she doesn't know that. That's funny. But it's like, I don't care, right?
I don't
I,
care.
I
Yeah.
don't care what some random person might think of me, but it's more important that we communicate clearly. And that's exactly what I was thinking. Like the ego protects itself.
Mm-hmm.
And typically that comes from a place of I don't know, fear ultimately, you know what I mean? And but
Yeah.
that humility is what comes out of it, having real confidence. Yeah, that's awesome. As far as the qualities or um, practices, mindset, whatever that really makes for a good trainer versus when you're on the other side, like a good trainee. Do you want to talk about some of that a little bit?
Yeah. Going through all of the roles has been really fun for me in every job. And so I do have a lot of thoughts on that. But, I think a good trainer would never ask someone to do something that they wouldn't be willing to do themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, right now with the city, that a question was asked of me because we have to deal with a lot of homelessness and unhoused
Mm-hmm.
issues, right? And so we ask of city staff to, go on these big cleanups, and it can be hard. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I don't want to go too far down, but they asked me how would I deal with that coming into this new role, and my answer was that I would go out with them and I would do it with them. I'm not the kind of manager that's going to be sitting on my desk asking other people to do something that I'm not willing to do. So I think
Yeah.
a trainer or a supervisor of any sort should model the behavior
Mm-hmm.
for everybody. So you should always be the role model. You should never be like, you're late all the time, when I show up whenever I want because I'm a manager. So it's like, no, I am on time every single day, because that's what I would ask of somebody. So I think that's really important, to model it and to never ask something you would not do yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I I think that humility and kindness. I've had a lot of experiences where I've had to have a record of discussion, or write somebody up from behavior,
Yeah.
or work through processes of where they couldn't physically do the job, and come to this conclusion together. And my goal with stuff like that is, at the end of that conversation, we have this difficult conversation, and at the end of it, my goal is always to have it be this really positive learning thing. Like, this isn't, I'm not here to belittle you or punish you. I am here to help you grow, because I care about you as an individual. And I think that is one of the most important things, is to like lead with kindness, but also like, I'm a pretty firm leader. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think you could ask most people that worked for me, that they're like, you're one of the nicest people that I've ever met, but I would not mess with you. And I'm like, that's how I want it to be. It's like that nice middle ground of like, yeah, I will show up with pizza once a month at the end of your day, paid for myself, and deliver it to you, to the crew, or whatever. And also, like, if you do something like negligent, like, you are not gonna want to like, just don't do that. So I think kindness and being direct and having humility are all the ways that I try to lead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And I mean, it seems like a lot of those would, as much as possible, like they sort of work on the flip side of being a trainer, right? I mean, certainly I think coming to it with humility, or sorry, trainee, that's what I meant. So like, if you come to it thinking like, well, I need to do this because I need a piece of paper, but I already know how, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like that's not a good way to be. And I think, I don't know, I feel like I have definitely experienced in burning on the in a national forest or other federal land, and then coming and burning with the group at BSER, and the way that it's done there, which is real similar, obviously, same kind of organizations, and lighting patterns are similar, all that kind of stuff, but there is just a different tone and feeling to it. And I think there's more expertise in some elements that we don't typically see on a federal prescribed burn that's done by firefighters who might have in some cases, vast amounts of fire suppression experience, or even prescribed fire experience. But that focus on like the ecological is there, which I haven't seen a ton of on the federal side. It exists in place to place, but and I think, to me, that was a huge, what's the word? It just revealed this whole other realm of basically this thing that I had been doing for 20 years, or a little bit less than that at that point, that we really didn't talk about a lot, and it was like, oh, this is not, I mean, you talked about it earlier, like, you can be doing this for however long, for a century, it doesn't matter, and there's still a lot more to learn. And I think that coming from that federal suppression side and seeing how things are done somewhere else, even if it looks really similar, that definitely taught me to be, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty humble anyway, but it definitely taught me to be even more humble about like my expertise, my level of expertise, and where I have big gaps, because I do. Right. And that really revealed that to me. Anyway, and maybe some of that is just to say that, getting experience outside of your sort of general organization, or your region of the country that you work in, or something like that, you kind of don't even know what you don't know in some cases. Right.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just helped with the most recent treks. I was the operations trainee with Dallas, and this Trex was the Maidu Cal Trex is what it was called, and it was really focused on on the Berry Creek Rancheria tribe, and training them in the NWCG incident command system model, so that they could return fire to their land that's been suppressed for 150 years or whatever, however long it's been. Too long, for sure. And I was reflecting with a good friend of mine who is also involved with the training, and he was saying something like, it's really good to teach this model and to teach this NWCG standardization stuff. But he was like, but also he's like, don't you think that we kind of put like more fear into them and created this like scarier thing where they're out there and they're this cultural part of their identity that they are returning fire to the land, and we just put like our standard box onto it. And I don't know, like I'm saying that in the sense of when you said you came out to Beaster and started looking at it in this different way, I had a very similar feeling reflecting on my experience with the MyDo Caltrax of looking at it in a completely different way. Because I've always been very happy to be like, we got our holding boss, we got our her firing boss, we have our burn boss, we have like this flank leader, that flank leader, like all those things, and like making this really standard thing. And that's how I've always done it. And watching it be done in a different way, where we had like the women of the tribe, they made bundles out of different medicinal herbs and dried them, and in their medicine area, that's how they carried fire through that area. They're like, we're not throwing a drip torch in there,
right.
And just like a different way of looking at it. And it, I hope I continue, like, again, the more experience, the more time I do this, I hope I just continue to like be like, oh my God, that's something I've never seen or haven't heard about or talked about, and just keep having more and more experiences like that.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for the, I want to put this delicately, I think it's really easy for folks, maybe sometimes on the suppression side of in various agencies. So it doesn't really matter which one. I mean, it could be the Forest Service, could be whatever. To because these agencies have had the legal, both privilege in some sense, but also the responsibility to be the keepers of fire on all these lands. I think it's really easy to come through that system and say, like, in my system, I'm the top. And then,
well, no offense, but y'all haven't done the best job. So,
well, yeah,
the keepers of the land. I think we should try a different model.
Right.
No offense, Eric. I have
no.
a ton of respect for you, and I'm just kind of a shit talker. So sorry.
No, I understand. Right, and then it's like, but there's this whole the world of fire is gigantic, right? And international as well. But there's even whole worlds just within your, the local area, just within your county or your state. And I think we've been, I don't know, it's funny. We just have this mindset sometimes of like, well, we have this system that you have to use. And so therefore, because we own it and we're the experts in it, then, I mean, that's, even bigger gatekeeping. Right. At such a higher level. But anyways, that's a topic that I do want to talk about on maybe a later podcast. But because there's so much there to talk about.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's see. I don't think I have a whole lot more for you, unless you have any other notes or reflections about training, about mentorship and stuff from your experience.
I think the only other thing that I wrote down, you said to talk about training or burning a favorite story, and I was like, God, there's so many good stories, and I couldn't nail it all down, but I thought of this one story where we were out burning, we were doing pile burns, and it was like super rainy, and we had all these huge piles going, and my supervisor, this is when I was a land steward too, and my supervisor says, I'm taking half the crew. We're going to go shop all the saws. You keep the other half of the crew and mop up these piles. And I'm like, cool. Okay. So then he goes and leaves, and I'm there for about another hour, hour and a half. When I take the crew down the hill, I find my supervisor and the other half of the crew still there. Supervisor not in a good mood because one of the crew members was driving the fire engine and it slipped off the hard part of the road,
Oh.
and it's like big heavy dually, and it just sunk into this like
Ah.
I was like,
Perfect.
he was just swearing, and I'm just like, this is hilarious. And so I pulled this little Tacoma that had a winch on it, and I like chained it to this big oak tree, and we're trying to pull this, F550 Type 6 engine out with this little Tacoma. I thought it was going to rip in half. I'm just laughing. I'm like, this is so fun. And my boss is he was so mad at me. So we finally like pull it out of the ruts, and this other guy jumps in, and he just takes off down the meadow, deeper into the mud field, but it was like downhill, almost catching air down to the road on the other side of this meadow. And I was like, oh my God, that is never what I would have run through my mind, is to go deeper. But his calculation was, I'm going to use gravity and I'm going to use speed. I've got it loose. And he just flew, and it worked. And that to me taught me like the diversity of thinking, and you always say the mosaic, right? And this is one thing I've learned so many times. It's just like and not everybody should think like me, and not everything should go the way that I have it laid out in my brain. This mosaic of experience, this mosaic of thinking and ways of doing things is like, diversity is the most important thing, whether it's an ecosystem or an organization or, just looking at things through different lenses is so important. And so I think that story just is a really great example of that diverse way of looking at things, and how important that is for any organization.
Awesome. I love that. Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay. I think we could probably close it there. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking me, Eric. I really appreciate that as well.
Thanks again to Lindsay for providing her perspective and speaking candidly about what fire looks like to all those folks outside of the, quote, official agencies. I can't stress enough how much we all have to learn from each other, and the importance of humility in the process of growing, learning, and leading in wildland fire. Well, that's all from me this time. I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to the Wildfire Lessons podcast. Don't forget to head on over to lessons.wildfire.gov to get all the latest information from the Wildland Fire Lessons Learn Center. You can subscribe to our email list and follow us on social media. Music is provided by second-generation smoke jumper Steve Baker, who always likes to keep one foot in the black. Thanks, Steve. Remember, we honor through learning.